So first things first, how are you?
Very good. Well, just came from we did a tour in Egypt and played three shows there. And unfortunately, a drummer got badly injured.
No,
I see that you're a guitar player, right? So you
I
probably know
have a
what it.
guitar. I think that's more.
Okay. No, but do you know what a Fender Twin Reverb is? Like an
No.
amplifier. Okay, it's a very, very heavy amplifier. It's like 60 kilos,
Okay.
and like a faulty gear in Egypt. And wanted to take the amplifier out of the car with another guy, and it kind of the flight case slipped, and the amplifier fell exactly on his toe, and it got completely smushed. So
Okay.
he had to get surgery in Egypt, and yeah, it was like a 60% chance that they had to amputate half his
Oh
toe.
wow.
So, but inshallah, everything went well. And, he
Luckily,
went.
it's all right. That's good to hear.
It was quite intense. So we then, after like we had 1 day break after coming back from Egypt. So in that 1 day, we had to get another drummer and rehearse, and so it was very, very intense. But the shows went all very well. So I'm very, very happy and
Well, that's good to hear. So before we talk about the new album and what you've been up to the last couple of months/years, I would like to go back to the beginning very quickly. So before the camera was on, you kind of mentioned looking through leaflets and vinyls and then whatever when you were younger, just browsing through music. So when did this passion for music start? Was there a certain album, a certain artist that kind of sparked everything for you?
actually like the first thing that kind of I remember was my dad had like a vinyl collection, and he sometimes like he didn't really listen to vinyl anymore because I'm born in '93, so it was more CDs,
Mm,
but still sometimes, like on special occasions he would put it
sure.
on. And so he put on The Wall by Pink Floyd. And as a kid, I was probably like 5, 6 years old or something, but I didn't get the concept, of this. And I was saying, yeah, like do the thing with the airplane, because I did first was like, and you hear an airplane crashing and a baby crying, and then there was like something with ice skating, and I was just like completely drawn into that world. And so that was a special thing for me. And then the Ennio Morricone, so the Clint Eastwood
Sure.
westerns, it was always like probably on TV like once or twice a year. So it was for me and my brother. We were like, I don't know, those were like the occasions when we were allowed to stay on a little later to see the Clint Eastwood thing, because my
Mhm.
dad also really loved it and my mom. So I was, but it's, ah, yeah, yeah, I think the first things that really turned me on. And
The Good, Bad, and the Ugly is that's the
yeah,
one, right?
yeah, exactly. And then I think it was. I wonder. I had a cousin that's like 5 year older than me, and he lives like on the other side of Austria. And we would go visit like I don't know 4 times a year. And he was like very into music, and he would always buy a lot of CDs and stuff. And every time my brother and I went there, we would get like hundreds, CD like empty CDs and copy everything he's bought.
Right, right, right.
And he was probably like 16, I was like 11, and he was like, yeah, yeah, you got to check out this, and you got to check out Black Sabbath and blah blah. And so I'd go home and like in my CD player and listen to everything, and I was like, then I came back, I was like, oh, I really love Queens of the Stone Age. And it's like, oh yeah, you got to check out Caius. And so it
Mm.
always like go further down the rabbit hole. But I think probably like the first bands that really, really got me excited for music was I think Megadeth actually. So
Okay.
I'm a big metal fan. I was a diehard Megadeth fan. Actually, also um, my first real concert where I begged my parents for 2 years or a year to go there was Megadeth, and actually it was in Vienna in the exact same venue that we just played
Oh
for our
wow.
tour, and yeah, so it's actually a quite big moment for me.
That's yeah, full circle, right? That's nice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But that's an interesting. What I find interesting then is you start listening to all this kind of music, and you start playing, and you meet Stephanie, and you start making music together. When you Because this goes into kind of one of the titles, one of the songs, "No Proper Life." But when did you kind of think, well, this I'm gonna do this path of the musician? Because it is a strange life, I would imagine. Because from what I hear from a lot of musicians, you have to make a lot of concessions. You have to. It is quite a choice. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, funnily is like it kind of happened for us, like we were always like both Steph and me were not classically trained at all, especially Steph. And we were just doing it, like I come from a family, my father is a plumber, and so my parents were like, yeah, go to the football club, to do something there, and you have to learn an instrument. So they were really encouraging us and making sure we do it, but it's always just like a hobby, And they were like, happy that I, played in a band, and they were proud and all that. But it was also for me, like, I just recently talked to a guy. I remember I was like doing like things in like this cultural center where I grew up, and we had for the small room there was like 10 people playing. We had a budget of 100 euros. Like it never crossed my mind, It was just like I just want to play. And at some point we were like studying and stuff and working, and it was like cool, and things really took off, and we were at a level where we're like, well, actually we could make a living from it now. It was kind of the first time that it kind of crossed our minds, and at first we said, well, let's just try it for 1 year and see what happens, and it kind of kept on growing, and now we're living the no proper life. So but it hasn't really been like this choice, like
okay.
I decide that's what we're going to do. And I think it's just because it's so natural for us, like we would spend every minute of our spare time just making music and actually not thinking about like the bigger plan or the strategy. And maybe that's also the thing that translates.
Yeah, that's probably healthy as well, not to overthink it too much. But
I actually feel like a lot of the trained, studied musicians, they have a completely different mindset, because they're like I actually know not so many musicians, like, and being like a trained musician is a completely different game. And so I sometimes feel like our fresh perspective, like not coming from this kind of musician mindset is makes it interesting, so.
Yeah, I think you've said this in other interviews before as well, but it does help you guys create your own sound in a way, because you just do things out of instinct rather than, okay, these are the rules and I have to operate within these rules.
Exactly. And also I think like as we're not classically trained, I think if you like studied guitar, you kind of want to make sure you don't embarrass yourself, in a way.
So you have to be technical, right?
A little bit, even if I think it's hard to, take that out of your brain. And so Steph and me were like, she doesn't see herself as a drummer, and I don't see myself as a guitar player. It's just like, we do whatever feels right. And I think that's, nobody cares how technical your solo is, people just care if it is cool or not. So.
Right. But you mentioned kind of those early years then of kind of bringing out music and when everything started. So if you compare where you are now with Welcome to Kookoo Island with I don't know how to pronounce this. Pippin Dunklet. How do you see the progression since then? Do you still listen to some of those old songs and kind of hear what you were trying to do?
I sometimes, like we recently actually listened to it, and I talked to a guy about it, and I'm actually still quite proud. It's like a completely different thing, of course. And we were like, when we recorded Pippin Dunklet, Steffi literally sat behind the drum kit for the first time like 2 weeks before recording. So she really didn't know what she was doing, and I also really didn't know what I was doing. And I think you can hear that, but also I think it definitely. It's definitely makes sense, it's like less advanced, but it's really powerful. I still love listening to it, and it's nice to see that we're like progressing in a way, but it's also nice to see that something we've done like 8 years ago isn't something you're like,
right.
It's not embarrassing or something. It's just like, you can hear that we had, everything in us that we have now, but we were younger, we were at a different place, and it's kind of the sound of us at that time. And it's nice to have that preserved.
With that in mind, then, is Kookoo Island, is that very much a similar thing then, where it's kind of this moment in time for you, this album?
Actually, in our vinyls for Anana, it says made to represent the sound of Cari Cari from, you know, this and this year. So I think
Okay.
it's very much that. And yeah, 100%. It's just always a journey. And for example, we never we never listened to pop music, you know, like song structures and choruses. We never had this, you know, like da 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 stop, hey, you know, and I never liked it. And a lot of people always said, like, we don't make songs, we don't write songs, we write tracks, you know, because they don't have real song structures and they don't have like a real chorus. And for example, Nothing's Already Yesterday doesn't have a chorus at all. So, but I think it's perfectly that way. And so we were just like, well, you know, let's try to work with somebody that is, you know, knows how to do the things that we don't know how to do. And so he's a very like a songwriting kind of guy, Paul Galista. And yeah, we just tried that and learned a lot, and also kind of but found out what the things are that we don't want to do. And yeah, so that's how kind of this sound came together. And I think the funny thing also is that it's been a very, you know, like bad time, you know, like with all those crises and Corona and blah blah. But it sounds like the happiest album we've ever done. And like also the concept with Kookoo Island, it was you know, it wasn't like we sat down and we're like, okay, we want to do like a concept album, but we just wrote music, and we have a studio in a national park, and we during the lockdowns we just, you know, had a great time. You know, we just were in a studio, we didn't have any deadlines, we were just making music and not thinking about it, because everything we do is pretty much subconsciously. And then we sat down and found out, hey, apparently like all of this is like about submarines or going to space or you know, like closing the world out and being in the little bubble or on an island. And I was like, oh, apparently that's something that's kind of, you know, topic for us at the moment. And so we kind of took it and ran with it and created this Kookoo Island concept, because it was just like in different ways and from different perspectives kept on reoccurring from in the album. And yeah, and actually they have, sorry.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt if you want to say something. But there was something when I was listening to the album, and obviously with the title like A Life Under the Ocean, the thing that it reminded me is, and what you just said now, is, and I believe you are Wes Anderson fans as well, is The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. It kind of reminded me of that whole thing. So I don't know if that was an inspiration at all on perhaps that song or the album.
Definitely as well. And I think like people say we make music that sounds like a Quentin Tarantino soundtrack, and I think like this one's even more like a Wes Anderson soundtrack sometimes. And yeah, I love A Life Aquatic, definitely. And also the whole imagery of it. And also I think I've really loved Wes Anderson because I'm really interested in kind of the social, the weirdness, you know, like dysfunctional relationships. I don't know. I think that doesn't really translate so much on the album probably, but it's something that fascinates me really.
No, but there, at least to me, I think there's a certain escapism in his films as well. And what you just mentioned, well, I wanted to ask this. I don't know if it's a good question, but when you think of, oh, sorry.
One thing maybe, like because you're saying escapism, if you think about Life Aquatic or also Moonrise Kingdom, it's always about kind of like a little bit the you know, the outsiders, you know, and that's kind of how Stephanie and me also feel sometimes, you know, like we're us against the world, and kind of being a little bit stubborn as well, and, you know, like a little bit quirky. And I think it's really why those films speak to us.
No, but what I find interesting then is because how do you visualize, because this is, we're talking about movies, and then you've talked in previous interviews about being inspired by films and things. So in terms of visualizing a lot of this, when you started this album process, did you have kind of a vision of what the island looked like? Did you have kind of a feeling of what that would be?
Well, not in the beginning, as I said, you know, it took a little while to, you know, to get to that point. And then it's always for Stephanie, where like Stephanie does all the music videos and artwork and stuff, but I'm always like so she's more proficient, you know, like with her hands, but I'm always like I think I also have good eyes, you know. So it's actually for music production, it's the other way around. She's got better ears than me, but I'm like, you know, I've got the hands. Or I'm doing something like whoa, whoa, and she stands there like, eh. And for visual stuff, it's the other way around. But yeah. What was the question again? Sorry.
So kind of if I say now Kookoo Island, what do you picture?
Actually, I think the first thing that I picture now is we've had an artist do a really cool screen print poster, and it was one of those things like there's nothing more beautiful for me than like a creative collaboration that works. And he was just like, well, like, yeah, that's kind of like how we picture it roughly. And he sent us like one draft and it was perfect. It's just, yeah. So that's kind of the first thing that I now picture when I see Kookoo Island.
But this notion of escapism, then is that a reaction to the years that we've had the past couple of years, and as you mentioned, with everything going on, is that what music has been for you guys as well? Kind of this way to kind of forget the ills of the world for a little bit and just have fun.
Definitely, and to be honest, also I felt like there was a lot of music put out that dealt with the isolation of COVID and stuff, and I was just like, oh, I just cannot hear it anymore. You know, generally I can't take it. There's so much bad music at the moment that we really, and that's also kind of something we realized afterwards, that apparently we needed that, you know, we kind of needed this therapy of just having this like little bubble where everything is fine, you know. And sometimes it's also about like our looking back to our childhood, you know, where things were easier and there's not so many things you have to think about and stuff. And
sure.
I think there's a big value in escapism as well. I think it's not all, because there's a lot of like, I think the zeitgeist at the moment is very much about, you know, like calling out problems and this person did this wrong or this wrong and blah blah, and saying it's important to create awareness, which I agree on, but I think it's in some cases it's has gone too far, you know, and sometimes it's just, you know, nice to just be like, you know, have this safe space where you just can, you know, like there's so much change happening everywhere, like the economic system is changing, like society is changing,
sure.
Like music is changing, the climate changing, blah, blah, blah. There's so many challenges. And so I think sometimes it's just overwhelming. And I think art also has like this value of just, you know, being that, because music for me always has been that, you know, kind of this thing that you can dive into. And if you're sad, if you're happy, and there's like, yeah. So I hope we can give that a little bit back.
Yeah, I think you definitely do, and especially the second half of the album, it for me at least, it really picks up. And the one song I was really interested in, it was "Enter Crocodile Mountain." I was really interested about that one, especially also because you mentioned the arranging parts of doing this album. I hear somewhat of, I don't think it is a sitar, but it kind of sounds like one. So what was the what was the approach with that song?
I think actually that song really was just a jam. Okay. You know, we were just, you know, rocking, and that came out. And I think it's a very good example of the beauty of Stephanie's drumming, because it's a very, very weird drum beat. And like if you would sit down like a trained drummer there, he would never play that, you know. And yeah, so I think we just built it on that, and the whole thing. I mean, the pre-chorus says, you know, it's all the making of an unsound mind, you know, like kind of going crazy. And that's kind of how sometimes the world felt to us, that everybody, you know, is like, what, are you crazy now? I think it's also one of the meanings of Kookoo Island. Sometimes it felt like we're the cuckoo, you know, the crazy people, and sometimes it felt like, are we the only sane people left alive, you know, and everybody else is going crazy? It's not, it's really happening, you know. And yeah, so I think that song deals a lot with that, and also energy wise, it was just, you know, like nice to just rock it out in a way, you know.
It's interesting that you say that, because I've been having that lately a little bit with am I the only one who's seeing this, or is everybody else? Lately had a couple of things I'm like, maybe it's me, maybe I'm just you know.
And I think like there's a big thing about you know, there's this the emperor's clothes, you know, that like nobody, the emperor's
Emperor's
naked.
New Clothes, yeah.
And I feel that's happening so often with a lot of times where I feel like, you know, we're all saying something that we actually don't think it's true, but you're saying it because it's like, well, you know, that's kind of what apparently people say, you know? So, yeah.
It's the culture we live in a lot of times, and we just repeat things we hear because I think this is what you alluded to as well, but we're bombarded with so much information, and everywhere there's something talking, and then you watch a podcast, you just repeat it like it's true. And it's kind of like that.
Or with like I see it a lot with bands where like with music journalists, I was at a festival and there's like this band that's really, I think it's really shit. German band is really shit. And our drama was also said the same thing. And we were doing an interview with her radio host, and we've done a few interviews with her, so we know each other and we're like friends. And you could see she was like, oh yeah, and oh that band is playing. Yeah, they're quite cool. Yeah. And you could see like she has to say it because like it's a hip band at the moment. And I was just like, you know what? I think they're really shit. I don't get it. I think it's like no hard feelings, but I really don't get it. And it's like, for me, one of the worst bands I've ever heard. Oh yeah, I agree. You know, I agree. It's so true. It's such a shit band, and it feels like nobody likes that band, but everybody, like, nobody dares to say like, well, no, I think it's shit. You know, and it's the other way around as well. Like, people always want to have somebody that gives like the stamp for people. This is the cool new band, and you gotta like it. And then it's like, not even, you don't even know a song. And I was like, oh yeah, I've heard of them. Really cool band. And yeah.
Well, finally then, because this ties into a little bit what we were talking about before the camera was turned on, but dealing with this industry and whether it would be preferable to have kind of grassroots connection with fans and then kind of building your audience from there, or just being thrown into the limelight through social media and stuff. And you guys have done it very much your own way. So how has building your audience been for you guys, and how do you are you very aware of your audience when you're working on music?
I think we're not aware of the audience when we're working on music. The reason for that is I think that we've built a very sustainable fan base, and I think that people like us for, you know, doing our own thing. And I think it's not like we're AC/DC, you know, and I really like AC/DC, but people expect the same thing. Or Rammstein, you know, like you don't want to hear you don't want to hear a bossa nova album by Rammstein. But David Bowie, for example, you know, you expect him to do something different. So I think on the AC/DC to Bowie scale, we're like more here. And so I think it's very nice. And the thing also is that because Stephanie and me were kind of limited in our technical abilities and kind of doing our things ourselves and having our voices that kind of like interlock, it's whatever we want to do, it's Cari Cari. And again, on this album, I felt like it's so out there what we're doing. Like, the songs are so different. And then you listen back to this and you're like, Cari Cari, you know? And it's actually quite nice because it gives us like the freedom of just, you know, doing our thing and not worrying, oh, is this going to be right? We never have this conversation, you know, what's the direction of the band. It's just, you know, whatever comes out of us and whatever feels right at the moment will be the right thing.
Well, finally then, because it ties into this, what do you, if anything, do you want people to live, because you're touring now, and you just mentioned you've been to Egypt and you're touring Europe, I believe, this fall. So what do you hope people will hear in the music, or do you have some kind of ideal of what people would feel when they listen to the music?
Well, the music I like the most is music that kind of works on a very, you know, emotional level, in a way that you just listen to it and you just like it. It just does something, and for no, you know, intellectual reason. But if you listen to it again and you listen to the music, to the lyrics, you know, that you can discover something there, and you listen to the production the next time and you can discover something there, and you can then you listen to the whole album and you can get sucked in deeper. So it's like very multi-layered. And I mean, I think there's bands that, like one band that I actually quite like, they released an album with a manifesto, and you kind of, you know, like you need the manifesto to understand it. And it's kind of like it's artistically it's interesting and it's very very high level, but you don't want to listen to it again. It's not a pleasure. It's kind of like you have to get through it, and I don't want to be that. I wanted to just, if you want and you just want to go to the concert and just party and have a good time, that's cool. But if you want to dig deeper, that's also cool. So I think it really, and our concerts, maybe you can make it to the show at Bittersweet. I think it's really like our audience is very mixed. It's like 15 to 70,
Okay.
and very different backgrounds, and it feels like everybody comes together and just has a good time, and I really like that. It's feels like a safe space for everybody.